and allowing me to tell you a little bit more about the Jackson School of Global Affairs. I want to move through these relatively quickly because I would rather engage in the back and forth and Q&A with Tamir and Yael. But I wanted to just go through these slides so that you have them in case there's anything that you want to go back to and review or, follow up on. Just a little bit about me. I am a graduate of Yale Law School, and before coming to the Jackson School, I was an associate dean at Yale Law School. I was the dean of admissions there. And before that, I was a special agent for the FBI doing counterintelligence investigations. And so I have been at Yale for a long time, know a lot about the university, and I'm especially I love the Jackson School because it aligns with my academic interests. I teach there. I also I teach national security law. I teach a course on Russian information warfare. And so for me, this is a great combination of academic and, bringing in new people like the people that will be watching this. So a little bit about the Jackson School, just so you have some history. The Jackson School is relatively new. It was launched in July of 2022, but don't let that mislead you because the Jackson School is built on the legacy of the International Relations Department at the Yale Graduate School. After we got a pretty generous donation from John Jackson, class of 67, in 2010, the International Relations Department at Yale became the Jackson Institute of Global Affairs. And we started granting degrees, a Master of Arts in Global Affairs from that point forward. And then in 2021, the Yale Board of Trustees approved Yale Jackson School becoming a school. And so we're now at Jackson School. And basically that means that we're an independent professional school. We're no longer under the graduate umbrella, but we still kind of have that whole legacy, all the alumni, et cetera. But being a professional school on our own basically means that, we have our own resources, able to hire our own faculty. It's only good things for students. And it's the first professional school at Yale since 1976. That was when the School of Management was created. And that's our business school. I'll be talking a little bit more about that. So I'm going to quickly go through the 5 F's, the flexibility and features, faculty, future, family, and funding. So technically that's 6 F's, but 5 bullet points. And I'll quickly go through those. So the key to understanding our graduate program is that we have 2 programs. We have a 2-year Master of Public Policy, and we have a 1-year Master of Advanced Study. And they're different in fundamental ways. The MPP, the 2-year MPP, is really for people who have been out of undergraduate for anywhere from 2 to 7 years, 2 to 8 years. Our average number of years worked for students coming into this program is 5. And, some more, a little, some less. And so these are people who have some work experience, but are still relatively early in their policy careers. And so what they're looking to do is to get this professional degree to help launch their policy careers. And I'll talk a little bit more about the curriculum, and this curriculum has 4 required courses. The 1-year Master of Advanced Study is for mid-career professionals. Generally, these are people with 7 to 10 years of work experience, and more than the work experience, really they're coming to get specialized skills or knowledge, and then kind of go back to the job that they're in. Like, they're not really looking to pivot or, start a policy career. They're already in it. We get a lot of people who are, for example, working for foreign government ministries or military or, a lot of like government agencies and things like that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. It's very small. That program, we typically have 2 to 5 people each year. This year, we really have one that's not through a special pipeline that we have. Whereas the 2-year MPP has a cohort. It's also very small, relatively speaking, but it's generally 30 to 35 people. So MPP program. As I mentioned, the MPP program has a core curriculum, but it's a pretty contained core curriculum. It's 4 courses, 2 in economics, 1 in history, 1 in political science. Everyone in the cohort takes those 4 core classes. Beyond that, what makes our program unique relative to other policy schools is that by design, Jackson expects students to take courses from across the university. So from other professional schools, like the business school that I mentioned, like the law school, School of Environment, from other academic departments. Because people have been working, they come in and they really have an area of focus that they're interested in, and they're able to custom tailor an interdisciplinary curriculum that matches that particular focus and what they want to gain out of the program. And you can see some of the different areas on this slide: international security and diplomacy, social and economic development, global governance, etc. In addition to the core curriculum, students are required to have language proficiency in order to graduate. If you are already proficient in a foreign language, I'm expecting that a lot of the people that are watching this will be, you can test out. Though, it's not uncommon for students to test out of the language requirement and then take advantage of the breadth of language classes at Yale to pick up a 3rd, 4th, 5th language. Students do that as well. So the faculty, I would say, is sort of multi-layered. As I mentioned before, we hire now our own faculty. They are jointly appointed between the Jackson School and another academic department. So if you look on our website, you'll see people who are Jackson in economics, Jackson in political science, Jackson in history. And they are kind of teaching your traditional university academic courses. We have also something called senior fellows. And senior fellows are practitioners from the field who come for 1 to 3 year appointments. And importantly, they teach classes. A lot of schools will have fellows, that are really kind of affiliated people who have an office and do research and kind of every now and then might interface with students. Our senior fellows are expected to teach. And so just to give you a sample of some of the people that have been at Yale, some are not here yet now, but Sue Binoche, who is here, she's a climate envoy at the UN. Harry Thomas is a retired ambassador, U.S. ambassador. Emma Skye is a journalist who's been embedded in war zones. Howard Dean, who is a former governor and was a former presidential candidate and foreign policy expert. And then Biza Williams at the bottom here, who is also a former U.S. ambassador. We also have something called World Fellows. And World Fellows I describe as sort of movers and shakers who get invited to spend 3 months at Yale. They come usually at the end of August. They stay until December. They are, just doing amazing, impactful things in their countries and in their areas. To give you kind of an example, Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader, was a former World Fellow, before he became the opposition leader. And of course, the tragedy that happened to him in Russia. But that's kind of the caliber of people that we're talking about. And those people are there to be mentors and network, and also be a source of, knowledge and help for our students. The future. So for our 2-year MPP program, we do require between the 1st and 2nd year of the program them to do a summer internship. And this slide just kind of breaks that down in terms of region and type. And this also gives you a sense of the jobs after Jackson and the career destinations. The MAS program, obviously there's no summer experience because it's a one-year program. But as I mentioned before, that's really for people who are coming for a very specialized reason, are going to go back to where they know that they're headed. So, we don't really do career counseling for the MAS program, but the flip side is that there's no required courses, and students in our MAS program can basically pick and choose courses from across the university to fulfill their requirements during the year that they're here. Here also is some information about jobs after Jackson and career destinations. Again, our Dean of Career Services meets individually with our MPP students to, find these jobs. And I should mention, for the MPP program, for those summer experiences, we do provide up to $6,000 of funding just for that summer job. Our class sizes, as I mentioned, very small. I know family seems kind of hokey, but it really is a very intimate, personalized atmosphere. This is not a program where you're going to be anonymous or, be able to hide if you owe a paper to somebody or something like that. But it makes it a really great, tight-knit environment. This just gives you some sampling of the alumni that we have around the world and the different kinds of areas that they are working in. And then this is a slide that just talks about some of the centers of like research hubs that we have at Jackson in terms of faculty and researchers who are specializing in different areas that our students have access to. This is the piece that I definitely wanted to cover. So our MPP program is now 100% tuition funded. So all students who are admitted to the 2-year MPP program do receive full tuition. If they're coming in with an outside scholarship, that's great. If they're coming in with a partial scholarship, we'll top it up. But basically, we ensure that no one is paying tuition for the time that they're at Jackson for the MPP program. About half of the students coming in for the MPP program also receive a cost of living stipend so that their full cost of attendance is actually covered. This year, about half the students are getting their full cost of attendance covered, and the remaining half are getting a half stipend. So, basically 3/4 of their cost of attendance is covered. So we are really proud of being able to make that accessible. Caveat, the MAS program does not come with funding. We do require students to come with external funding for that. And again, that's underscoring that these are usually later career professionals, often sponsored by their employers to come and do this 1 year. And so we do not provide funding for that 1-year program. This is just a quick list of the requirements. We do require only for the MPP program, the GRE. And so that is a test that you would need to take. And we would need those scores by the deadline of January 2nd. Also, if your undergraduate degree was taught in a language other than English, we also require the TOEFL. And we do accept a couple of other English tests, the IELTS and the Cambridge language, but I'm just using TOEFL for short here. And you can find out those requirements on our website. The MAS program does not require the GRE. Again, there's a little bit of the difference between the programs. Both programs require 3 letters of recommendation. Strongly advise that at least one of those recommendations be from a person who taught you in an academic environment, so a faculty reference. The application for the MPP is January 2nd. If you apply for that by December 1st, the $75 application fee is waived. Please note that the MAS deadline, that 1-year program, is earlier. It is November 1st, and there is a non-waivable fee of $100. Again, we make that a little bit earlier because we want to ensure that we can get through all of the application reviews, but also because there's no GRE, so we can pull that deadline up a little bit earlier. For both applications, we require a statement of purpose, personal statement. This is sort of open-ended, but really what we're looking for is, what your interest is in global affairs and public policy, what you've been doing, how to connect those dots between, your personal, academic, professional trajectory and what you want to study and what you hope to get out of your time at Jackson. We also require a resume. We're mainly interested in your work experience. Sorry, I don't know why that flipped. And then we need a transcript, and it can be unofficial at the time that you apply, but you will be required to submit an official transcript before you matriculate if you are admitted. And then here are some of our contact information and social media platforms, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to stop sharing. I think I went through that in record time. And now I can answer any questions that you have.
Great. First of all, I appreciate you going over it so quickly. And I think you answered quite a few questions that Yale and I had, but that's great. We'll have others to ask. Yale, do you want to start?
Sure. So really, thank you. It's also amazing to see that it's fully funded. I think that's a huge selling point for anybody, but certainly for Israelis. I'm curious, from your perspective, when you're looking at applications, what do you most look at? What are the parts of the application that you're really looking to focus on, so that when people are building their application, they know what to put most focus on, and know whether they're also competitive applicants going in?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a hard one to answer because, and I know you're going to hate me for saying this, because it really just depends on the applicant. What I think, if there's a common thing that we really want to look at, it's that demonstrated interest in global affairs. Typically, for our international applicants, that's not a hard thing to demonstrate. I mean, honestly, by virtue of being an international student with that international perspective, even in their home countries, that's something that, kind of meets that threshold. Beyond that, what we're really interested in is, number one, academic ability and promise. Can this person do the work, like handle the rigor of the Jackson program? This is an academically rigorous program. We want people to thrive and succeed. And so we're really looking for, parts of the application that will point to that they can do that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. And then the second prong is, what are they bringing to this cohort? What is the unique combination of perspectives and backgrounds and skills that they're bringing? Because, we have a really small cohort. And so our students, I think, will tell you that they learn as much from each other as they do from the people that they're in class with, or, their senior fellows and world fellows. Like, they really form a tight bond. And I think because people come in with such a diverse array of backgrounds and, experiences, that piece is really important to us in terms of enriching that aspect of the class. So with regard to the academic promise, I think there are basically three parts of the application that inform us in this regard. One is the undergraduate, record. The people that we admit generally have done incredibly well in their undergraduate studies. The GRE is helpful. It's not dispositive. I always say that a standardized test is not going to necessarily override a poor academic record. So, the academic record is more important, but the standardized tests can help in illuminating, that you have a strength in certain areas. And in particular, we're interested in quantitative ability, because that core curriculum does include quantitative courses, and that's usually the one that students have the most, struggle the most with. So if we're looking at the GRE, it's really mostly the GRE quantitative that we're putting the weight on. If you have quantitative background, whether it's academic or professional, and the GRE quantitative you don't think reflects your actual ability, you can include a supplemental statement that kind of highlights some of your other coursework or experience, and that can help us. And then finally, again, in the academic piece, your letters of recommendation. So that's why I suggest that you have at least one faculty reference. And, if you feel like those other two things, either your academic transcript or your test scores are not as strong as you think they should be, it can be helpful to have a second academic reference as well.
Okay, this is really helpful. I have another question about the Israeli candidates. Yale and I speak to many of them, MPP prospects from across the country who are interested in prestigious programs abroad and specifically in the US. I would love to know from you, what are the selling points or advantages that Israeli candidates have, and how should they reflect them in the application? As you may know, military service is mandatory. A lot of Israelis deal with international policy, whether security or other aspects. So I'm just wondering, from your experience, how should they reflect that when they apply and when they write their materials?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think one thing that I see with Israeli applicants, similar to South Korea as well, which has a military service requirement, is that they've actually engaged in, service. And, as a former government servant myself, not in the military, but in law enforcement, that gives you a really unique perspective. And I think it's really one that you should, that students should really utilize in their application, because it's not something that a lot of people have. And we do value that. Like, we value, regardless of country, people who have government or public service. So that is sort of like already a point in the favor of our Israeli applicants. And then, of course, just that it is a region that matters. It's a country that matters in a region that matters, that has so many implications for, our global stability and security. And, I want to make assumptions, but I'm assuming that most of the students, especially by virtue of having served in the military, are really have an insight and perspective into those that, is really unique. And, for those of us who are outside of that, especially when there's ongoing conflict. I mean, I see this also with our Ukrainian applicants, just to understand something that's happening that we see every day on the news, and how, that impacts somebody personally and professionally, and what they're thinking about, what they see as the salient issues that need to be addressed.
Great, thank you. One more question from me. Staying in the topic of Israeli candidates, many other top programs, other public policy programs have larger cohorts. I think Israelis are maybe drawn to hearing more about them, whether it's Harvard Kennedy School or in Columbia or other universities. I'm interested to know from your perspective, why Yale and Yale Jackson, and why do you think Israeli applicants should apply to your program rather than other leading programs across the states?
So I think they should apply to all the programs. I have nothing bad to say about my peer programs. I think the Kennedy School is amazing. I know I mentioned to you, I'm a Princeton graduate, so I think that's a great program. What I think that Yale offers, which our peers don't, is the porousness between the Jackson School and the other parts of the university. Typically, policy programs, the traditional model is that they're designed to be kind of self-contained. There's a pretty structured curriculum. To the extent that you have flexibility, you can exercise that flexibility within the policy school. Jackson is built from the ground up with this idea that the philosophy is that today, to address our global challenges today, you have to break these academic silos. And so somebody who's coming in with an interest, let's say, I'll just use kind of something that I'm familiar with, great power competition and global security. You can come in and there will be courses in the Jackson School that fit that interest. But you might want to take a course from the East Asian Studies Department. It might be important to take a course from the law school on international law, or in national security law. Actually, you can take that at Jackson because I teach it. But my point is students who are interested in development will take courses at the School of Business on social entrepreneurship and things like that. Students interested in global health have access to courses at the School of Public Health. And so we break down those silos, and in some programs, I won't name any, but there aren't professional schools to be able to do that with. It's only the policy school that is the professional school. And then in others, it's much more rigid. Like it's more the exception rather than the rule to be able to go outside of the program. So I think that the benefit is, it might feel like a small cohort, but actually you have access to the student bodies and networks of the entire university, which I think is a benefit.
So as a follow-up to that, I think for many Israelis who are going, certainly now, but always, having a sense of community is important. And in some of the schools that are bigger, sometimes you'll have a group of Israelis who go. So I'm curious if if across Yale, there is a community of Israelis, there are Israelis who also study at the other schools who would be able to provide some sort of community feeling because I assume that since it's a small cohort, you'd have, maybe one Israeli, but there wouldn't be a big group. So if you know anything about that.
Yeah, there is definitely very active Jewish community in the larger Yale context, and then also at the different professional schools. You are right that, because we're a small cohort, our representatives from any country really is going to be, singular usually. But I think this is why the cross-pollination with all of these other communities and constituencies is really important. And from what I understand, our Jewish students get very involved and connect with those groups usually from the get-go. And I think those resources are provided and the contacts are provided, at the time that they come to Yale, if not before.
One more question for me. What's your ideal target for a graduate of the program? Like, where do you see your graduates 5 or 10 years from now? I know we touched upon that in the presentation. Let's say we have an Israeli applicant. Where do you envision themselves? Is it in the US, back home in their countries, or in Israel? Like, how do you see that, and how do you promote them in achieving these goals for them?
Yeah. I would say, I don't think, we don't have a cookie cutter approach to, even what we give them when they come to Jackson. So we don't have one for when they graduate. I will say that we aspire for each incoming cohort to be 50% international, because we really want our graduates to disperse around the world. And usually our international students do go back to, their home countries because that's typically what's informed their interests when they've come to Jackson. So we really want a global presence. We do, I think one of the advantages of having a smaller network, kind of this close-knit atmosphere, is that our alumni network is very closely connected. And, like I'm doing this information session because, one of our world fellows connected you with that. So, I think that there is a great sense of affection and attachment of people who come to Jackson, whether they come in our degree program, world fellows. And I think they are an incredibly valuable resource for anyone who then leaves the program and, wherever they end up.
Great, thank you. Yeah, any other questions from you?
No, I think the presentation covered everything perfectly.
So I have one slightly technical question about the GRE. I'm interested to understand like the spectrum of the grade that you're expecting, or if you provide GRE waivers. And I'm asking this specifically in the last where many of our alumni were called to serve back in duty, and the whole schedule or the planning of each student to apply or apply for a GRE basically was changed due to the situation. So how do you view that? If there is a policy around it, if not, that's fine. Just to know how you treat applicants from this region.
Yeah, we do not allow you to waive the GRE. But I can tell you that we do take into consideration like extenuating circumstances in terms of like performance on it. Like if you're deployed, it's obvious that, if you're taking the test in the middle, especially in kind of a stressful time and mental, your mental bandwidth, we understand that. You should know I read all the applications myself. So there's no computer button that I push and I just, anybody below a certain score gets cut off. Like I literally sit down and I read every single application. So every application gets read at least once and it gets read up to 6 times. So every application is getting a thorough review, and kind of this is why it was so hard for me to say, Yale, when you said like, what do you value the most? You can look on our website for the averages. I can tell, and I think we actually include the high and lows, and you can see from the low GREs that we accept that we all obviously look at factors other than the test score. So people should not get hung up on that. I feel very strongly about this as an admissions person that you are not your test score. It is a data point that we use to help inform the application. And so I don't know if that helps. There is a human that's behind everything, with a heart and can understand what's happening. So.
Yeah, it makes sense 100%. Thank you for that. And I'm glad you're a human and reviewing it yourself. And it's exciting. Actually, it made me want to join your program. So.
Oh, good.
Who knows? I might apply again for a master's. I'm joking. Anything else from you before we conclude?
No. The only thing that I would say is that you can go on our website, and Samir, maybe I will send you the link. There's a contact form that people can fill out, and then they're just on our mailing list to get updates. I send out application tips later in the fall. If you really want to participate in this presentation again, you can sign up for another webinar. But they'll just ensure that they continue to get communications from us. And there's also an FAQ on the website if there's anything specific. Actually, let me say one more thing, because I didn't cover it in the presentation. It is possible to do joint degrees at Yale with Jackson and another school. I mentioned that we have all these other amazing programs. We have the School of Management, which is the business school, School of the Environment, School of Public Health, the law school, and what am I missing? Okay, I'm blanking. There's one more school. But actually, I think we're the 5th school. So there's 5 schools. There's also, architecture. I mean, there's a lot of other schools, but those are the 5 main ones that kind of do joint degrees. To do a joint degree, you can apply to both programs at the same time, or you can apply to one and then apply to the other during your first year in that program. If you apply to both at the same time, like let's say you apply to Jackson and you apply to the School of Management, the business school, you get into both, you would take a 1-year deferral from the business school and you would start at Jackson. You complete your first year, then you would enroll at the business school, complete 1 year, and then you do 1 semester at each of the schools. Basically, a joint degree allows you to use a semester of one school's coursework towards the other school's degree. So you shorten the total period of study by 1 year. And so, it's a really great way if you really want that, that professional degree for what you want to do. It can be a great way to economize and really take advantage of the resources. And, Often people just need very limited specialized knowledge, in which case our curriculum allows you to do that. You don't need to get a whole 3-year law degree if really what you're interested in is international law and human rights. You can take that in a couple of courses. But some people who do want to practice law or really want that JD they can apply for that. And we do allow joint degrees on a case-by-case basis with programs outside of Yale. So if you want to do that joint law degree, MPP, not everybody can get into Yale Law School, but you get into Harvard, NYU, we can work with you to work out that kind of joint degree.
Great. And I think with that, I'll just end by thanking you for this opportunity and for sharing more about the school and about the program. It's really exciting. And we hope to stay in touch and share more with prospective students.
Please do, and reach out to me if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.